Biochemistry and Macromolecules by Sharon Sparling, Rachel Fry, and Helen Rogowski. Atoms are the building blocks of all matter, and they all consist of subatomic particles, including protons, neutrons, and electrons. Protons have a positive charge, neutrons have a neutral charge, and electrons have a negative charge. A bond is formed when two atomic nuclei attract the same electrons. An ionic bond results from the transfer of electrons, while a covalent bond results from atoms sharing electrons. If electrons are shared equally between atoms, it's considered a nonpolar bond, and it's considered a polar bond if they are shared unequally. An anion is when an atom gains electrons, while a cation is an atom that loses electrons. Water has 5 main properties. It has high specific heat, high heat of vaporization, it's a universal solvent, and it exhibits strong cohesion tension, like surface tension, which allows insects to walk on water without breaking the surface. And finally, it has the property that ice floats because it's less dense than water. pH is the measure of the acidity of a solution. A pH less than 7 is considered an acid, such as stomach acid. Anything with a pH greater than 7 is considered a base, such as human blood. And anything with a pH of 7 is considered neutral.
Now let's look at macromolecules. Biologists use the term macromolecule to refer to a very large molecule. Macromolecules are made through polymerization, where large compounds are built by small compounds joining together. You can see this in the diagram where monomers link together to become a polymer. There are 4 categories of macromolecules. They are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. First off, let's look at carbohydrates. Living things use carbohydrates as their main source of energy. Carbohydrates are made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Living things store extra sugars as complex carbohydrates known as starches. Bread is an example of a carbohydrate. Now let's look at lipids. Lipids are made up of carbon and hydrogen atoms. Lipids can store energy, but are also important in biological membranes and waterproof coverings. 2 kinds of lipids are saturated and unsaturated. Olive oil is an example of a lipid.
Next, let's move on to nucleic acids. Nucleic acids are macromolecules that store and transmit heredity, which is genetic information. There are 2 kinds, ribonucleic acid and deoxyribonucleic acid. These are also known as RNA and DNA. RNA contains the sugar ribose, and DNA contains the sugar deoxyribose. Nucleic acids contain hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, and phosphorus. Nucleic acids are assembled from individual monomers called nucleotides. Nucleotides are made up of 3 parts. 1, a 5-carbon sugar, 2, a phosphate group, and 3, a nitrogenous base. Individual nucleotides can be joined by covalent bonds to form a polynucleotide or nucleic acid. Proteins are macromolecules that contain nitrogen, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Proteins are polymers of amino acids. These have compounds of an amino group on one end and a carboxyl group on the other end. Proteins are one of the most diverse molecules because of amino acids. There are over 20 amino acid molecules found in nature. Here are 2. All amino acids are identical in the regions where they are joined by covalent bonds. By being similar, amino acids can join to any other amino acid by bonding an amino acid group to a carboxyl group. The only thing that distinguishes the amino acid from the other is the R group section, which is here. This concludes the brief review of biochemistry and macromolecules. We will end with a simple joke. Why did the white bear dissolve in water? Because it was polar.